जैसा कि आमतौर पे मशहूर है कि चैनल को लाइक करें और सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल आइकन को प्रेस करें और एक टांग पे 3 दफ़ा छलांगे मारें ताकि आपको इसकी नोटिफिकेशन आ सके बाकी की वीडियोज़ जो अपलोड हो। बिस्मिल्लाहिर्रहमानिर्रहीम। लिनक्स सीखना, उसको यूज़ करना कंप्यूटर साइंस के स्टूडेंट्स के लिए स्पेशली और प्रोफेशनल्स के लिए आमतौर पे इट्स एन एसेंशियल स्किल। मैंने कोर्स बनाया था, पेड कोर्स जो कि इंग्लिश में है, यूडेमी के ऊपर उसको मैंने डाला। लेकिन मैं हमेशा से यूट्यूब के जितने भी व्यूअर्स हैं उनके लिए उसको फ्री अवेलेबल करता रहा। पहले यूडेमी की कूपन्स बनाता था, लेकिन फिर उसके बाद यूडेमी की कूपन्स के अंदर बड़े मसले मसले पैदा होने शुरू हो गए, तो मुझे उसकी कूपन्स एसेंशियली यूडेमी की पॉलिसी अलाउ नहीं करती आराम से इज़्ज़त से क्रिएट करना। तो आई डिसाइडेड टू मेक देम अवेलेबल ओवर हेयर ऑन यूट्यूब। मैं उन छोटे छोटे लेक्चर्स को या पीसेस में या एक एक करके या दो दो मिला के यूट्यूब के ऊपर अपलोड करूँगा इंशाल्लाह। ये पहली वीडियो है उसकी, उसका इंट्रोडक्शन है और शुरू के एकाध लेक्चर्स हैं। पूरा कोर्स मैं इसके ऊपर अपलोड करूँगा। तो जैसा कि आमतौर पे मशहूर है कि चैनल को लाइक करें और सब्सक्राइब करें और बेल आइकन को प्रेस करें और एक टांग पे 3 दफ़ा छलांगे मारें ताकि आपको इसकी नोटिफिकेशन आ सके बाकी की वीडियोज़ जो अपलोड हो। इट्स इन इंग्लिश, लेकिन इंग्लिश इतनी ज़्यादा मुश्किल नहीं होगी, इंशाल्लाह आपको फ़ायदा होगा इससे। ज़रूर इसको देखें और कोशिश करें कि यूबंटू के ऊपर स्विच हों। यूबंटू मेरी जनरल रिकमेंडेशन है। लिनक्स की यूज़ विंडोज़ के ऊपर भी मैंने इस कोर्स के अंदर कवर किया है, बट आई वुड नॉट रिकमेंड डूइंग दैट। रिकमेंडेशन ये है कि प्रॉपर लिनक्स इंस्टॉल करें, उसको यूज़ करना शुरू करें, बहुत कुछ सीखेंगे। सो दैट्स इट फॉर द इंट्रो। आगे की जो वीडियो है वो उसके आगे फिर शुरू होती है।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hi, and welcome to Linux command line from zero to expert. Whenever the word command line comes up, people imagine some primitive way of interacting with the computer. They tend to think that there might be some situations in which the command line might become necessary, but in general, the graphical user interfaces are the more powerful way of interacting with the computer. In reality, though, it's the exact opposite. There might be some cases in which the graphical user interfaces might be more powerful, but for most tasks, the command line is the better way. In this course, I want to show you why this is the case. So who am I? I'm Dr. Noman and I'll be your instructor for this course. I have a PhD in computer science and a postdoc from Max Planck Institute for Software Systems, one of the world's leading research and development institutes. I have more than 15 years of teaching experience and about 2 decades of programming experience. I have also worked as a freelance developer and a system administrator on the Upwork marketplace for more than 5 years. I'm an assistant professor at a computer science university and have guided and supervised students in several areas of computer science over a long period of time. Because I've worked with so many different areas of computer science, I know how important it is to know the tools that are cross-cutting, tools that help you succeed in many different areas so that the effort you put in once pays off again and again. And the Linux command line is at the top of this list. When I teach Introduction to Computing to my undergrad students, I tell them to stop using Windows and move to Linux. And I tell them to start using the command line because it's the best investment of their time. It helps people learn stuff that isn't even related to Linux. Once you master the Linux command line, it will open up doors for you. It will help you learn new technologies at least twice as quickly. And what's great about it is that it doesn't take up too much effort to learn. Now, you might have heard otherwise. You might have heard that the command line is a difficult thing to master and that you have to memorize all this stuff that makes no sense. The reason people suffer when learning the command line is because of the way it is presented to them. Commands upon commands showing what everything does without telling you why you would want to do that in the first place. In this course, we take a different approach. I will not go through the whole list of all possible commands that people usually present. Instead, I will go through only those commands that come in handy on a daily basis. I will focus on giving you the rationale behind how commands work and to get you in the rhythm. Once you understand the way commands fit together to solve problems, you will be in a much better position to learn new commands as you encounter them. You will go through some simple case studies, such as downloading a complete YouTube playlist through the command line. The idea is to approach the command line from a problem-solving perspective instead of as a list of commands that need to be memorized. For the course, you only need access to a computer. If you already have Linux or Mac, you can use that. If you are on Windows, we will cover how you can set up Linux in a virtual machine so that you can get to the command line as quickly as possible with minimal effort. No background of the command line or the Linux operating system is assumed. So enroll now and I'll see you on the inside.
Hi, and welcome to the course. If you already have Linux or Mac installed, you can simply open up a terminal and start with the rest of the course. However, if you are in Windows, first I would really highly recommend that you install a local copy of Ubuntu and use that instead of trying to use Windows for your development. You'll thank me down the line because there are many issues on Windows if you are going to stick with it for almost any area: system administration, machine learning, IoT, all the software that you find is going to have trouble with Windows because developers typically go with Linux first approach. Anyway, if you still want to continue with Windows, I'm going to show you how you can set up the Windows subsystem for Linux, which is essentially going to allow you to use the command line of Windows or Ubuntu on your Windows machine without having to dual boot or install Ubuntu on a separate partition. So if you're not already familiar with WSL, you will see how you can get a small Linux environment which is going to give you the ability to use the Linux command line and all the power that comes with it on Windows, so you can have the best of both worlds. So let's go ahead and set that up and you'll see what I mean. So for that, first you need to enable the WSL on the Windows features. For this, we're going to head over to our start bar and search for turn Windows features on or off. Click on this and it will allow you to select which features of Windows you want. Here we are interested in Windows Subsystem for Linux or WSL. So scroll down and you'll see it at the bottom of the list. So make sure that you have enabled Windows Subsystem for Linux over here. Make sure that the checkbox is checked next to it and then click on OK. It might ask you to restart the machine, so do that if it asks you for a restart, and probably some updates will also be required. So once that is done, we are going to install the Subsystem for Linux, which is actually going to give you the command line that you can work with for the rest of the course. So once that is done, we're going to head over to the Microsoft Store by searching for it in the taskbar. So head over to the taskbar and search for Store or Microsoft Store and then click on this Store icon. Here you can search for Ubuntu in the search bar over here and pick whichever version you like. I'm going to go with Ubuntu 22.04 LTS. This is the long-term support version. Simply go ahead and click on install or get. Depending on your distribution, it might be a different caption, but click on this button and it's going to go ahead and download everything that is needed. This might take a little bit of time, so I'm going to skip ahead in time until this is all done and then we're going to start using it. So once this is done, you can either click on open or head over to the taskbar again and search for Ubuntu and click on this to start the Ubuntu distribution for the first time. The first time is going to take a little bit of time and you're going to have to do a little bit of setup, but this is just going to be one time and after that everything is going to be perfectly smooth. So let's wait until this is done and then we're going to set up a new username password for our Ubuntu that is running in this Windows Subsystem for Linux. So essentially what WSL is that it allows you to run Windows, and because the Windows command line really sucks and the PowerShell isn't all that better either, it allows you to install Ubuntu in a small virtual machine like environment. It's not exactly a virtual machine and you don't even have to understand how this works. Essentially, it's going to give you a command line that you can use just as any other Linux command line, except it's going to use the file system that is on your Windows machine. So you get the Windows GUI, you get the Windows file system, everything that you're already comfortable with, plus you get the Linux command line as well, so that you can get the best of both worlds. So the first time you start it up, it's going to ask you for a new Unix username. So let's go ahead and give that to it. I'm going to call it Nam. That's going to be my username. And then I'm going to give it a secure password. You won't see the password, but it's going to be typed. So retype it again. And once that is done, you are going to have a command line that you can start using. If you were on Linux and you started a terminal, you could just go ahead and work with the rest of the course. On Windows, you have to do a couple of things just to make sure that the WSL is set up properly and that you can work with the rest of the course smoothly. So we're going to issue just two commands. You don't have to understand those commands at the moment. We're going to explain them in the middle of the course. But for now, just issue them just as I'm going to do it so that you can work with the rest of the course smoothly. Okay, so these are just two commands. You issue them on the terminal without having to try and understand it. Okay. So let's first go ahead and close this and reopen this so that you understand how to do that. So all you have to do is search for Ubuntu and just start it. Okay, when you start it, you get the terminal, and here we are going to issue two commands. The first command is going to be sudo apt update, and that is going to update all the package repositories. Give it the password that you set earlier on, and it's going to download some repositories. Again, I'm going to explain what this command means in the middle of the course, but for now just issue it so that the environment is set up properly. wait for it to get done, and then we have to issue just one more command. All right, so once this installation is done, we're going to issue one more command, and this is going to be sudo apt install unzip. So this is the package that we need to get started with the course. So we're going to install it right now. Again, more details on these commands later on in the course. For now, just set it up. All right, what have we done? We have enabled the WSL in Windows features. We've installed Ubuntu. We've started it, set up the username password, and issued two commands, sudo apt update and then sudo apt install unzip. That's it. Those are the only 4 steps that you need. And once this is done, everything is set up for you on your Windows machine. You can go ahead and start with the rest of the course. Best of luck with that. If you have any problem at all, please do post in the Q&A and I will try to help out as quickly as possible.
Welcome to the course. Let's get started. As the name suggests, we're going to go from zero to expert. So if you've had a little bit of experience with the command line before, you might find the initial few lectures a little bit boring and a little bit too basic, but I would strongly suggest that you do go through them at least. You can put the speed to 2x, but please do go through them so that we're sure that we're not missing anything, right? So let's begin by taking a look at what the difference is between Windows and Linux file systems. So you would be aware of the hierarchy of folders and files in Windows. So at the root you have what are called the drive letters. So you have C colon drive letter over here, and within this you have what are called folders. So in Windows you might have a program files folder. In C colon you might have a users folder, you might have a Windows folder, or any other folder that you might want to create. Within the users folder you have your own home directory. For me it is going to be Noman, and within that I can create further directories, right? So that is essentially what Windows hierarchy looks like. So folders within root drives. So if you have a D drive, that is going to be a completely separate tree from this one. Windows is arranged in drives. So drives are the root letters of these trees. Linux is a little bit different. What it does is it puts everything under one root, which is called, surprisingly, root. This slash stands for that root. Everything, every different partition that you have, every drive, every external device that you add to Linux is going to go within this one tree. So it is a singular tree, and within this tree everything is going to fall under this slash. So this is called your root. If we have a home directory, that goes into the slash. So this is going to turn into slash home, just as we had C colon slash Windows. Within this home we are going to have my home folder. So this nam is my home folder because this is my username, and within this I can again create my hierarchy of folders. Except in Linux terminology, we're not going to call them folders, we're going to call them directories, right? So a minor difference in terminology. So in Windows, a path looks like this. So we're going to have C colon, the drive letter, backslash Windows, which is a folder, backslash another folder, backslash a file name .txt, right? Or whatever the extension is. In Linux, the convention for separating one folder from another or a file from a folder is a little different again. So all the Linux flavors use forward slash. So this forward slash is our root, and then we have a directory, and then we have another separator which is forward slash instead of a backslash, and then another directory forward slash another directory forward slash a file. So that is the primary difference that we have between paths in Linux and Windows. So you should be aware of this, that you should be using forward slash whenever you're working with Linux. So once we have that understanding, we need to take a look at one last concept, that is that slash home slash nam is my home directory. In Windows, typically you can create another partition, and that's what normally people do, that they create another partition for their documents and they put them over there for safekeeping. In Linux, everything that I do is going to go into my home folder, slash home slash noman. There are ways of creating different partitions for different users, but we're not going to go into that right now. What we should be aware of is that typically in a Linux environment, you're going to be working within your home folder. So for me, it's going to be slash home slash nam. For you, this is going to be whatever username you picked during the installation, as we saw in the last videos. Another thing to remember is that, for instance, I have slash home slash nam as my home directory. This can also be written as a tilde sign. right? So this tilde is this is next to the exclamation mark. So you have at on top of 2, you have the exclamation mark on top of 1, and then you have the tilde to the left of exclamation mark. This tilde sign stands for home directory in almost all Linux flavors, right? So you should remember that. And you can see that in my home folder, so this is my home folder, you will be seeing this, something very similar to this in your Linux environment. So in my home directory, I have created a folder called CLI. You do not have to create this. When you start the terminal, your command line, it's going to be in your home directory and you can immediately start working over here. I've just kept it separate for ease of use. So once we are over here, we're going to immediately start working with some files. So let's go ahead and issue a command. So this is a command line. Every interaction is through commands. So I'm going to say date, and it's going to show me the current date. So that's how we interact with the Linux command line. We issue commands and we get output from it. Let's see another command. So we have cal, and that shows me the calendar of the current month. Now, immediately what you would be wondering is, how am I going to remember all these commands? Don't worry, with just a little bit of practice, let's say a week, you're going to be able to recall all the commands that you need very easily. It's not that difficult. We'll see how that happens. By the way, if you're wondering why your terminal looks kind of bland without all these colors, we have a separate video by the end of this course in which we tell you how you can make your terminal look like this, right? So if you're going to stare at your terminal for a long while, it might as well look pretty. But let's go ahead and download some of the files that we are going to be working with. So if we were in a GUI, I would tell you to go to a URL, download the file to a folder, copy it somewhere, and then extract it, and you would get the files. In the command line, and this is where the power of the command line comes in, I'm simply going to tell you to issue the wget command. So this is a web get command. So get from the web, and we're going to say http://bit.ly/cli-files. And with that command, you have all the information that you need to download these files. Right? So issue that, it's going to go ahead and it's going to output some of the stuff, and it's going to make the file available for you. So it's telling you over here that CLI-files is now available, right? Let's go ahead and, because I know that this is a zip file, let's go ahead and unzip it. So unzip is the command that unzips the zip files. So I'm going to say unzip CLI-files, and it tells you that it has extracted all of these files which are going to be in this folder CLI-files 0.0, right? And all of these files have been extracted. Now you might see a few more than these as I add more content to this course, but at the moment that is what we are going to have. Now we want to see what kind of files we already have over here. So we go ahead and issue the command ls. Right? So when we say ls, that means list the directory, and we see that we have this file over here that we just downloaded, and this folder over here that we have extracted, that has become available as a result of extracting this zip file. Right? So it doesn't have the .zip extension over here, but Linux doesn't really care about the extensions as long as the file contents are properly available. Now what we want to do is, because we've extracted the file and we've taken a look at it, we want to clear all of this junk that is available on the screen, right? So we want to get rid of this so that we have a clear terminal. For that we have the command clear. So we issue that and everything goes away, and now we can simply do ls again to see what kind of files we have, right? So notice that, and this is really important, notice that we don't have any spaces in the folder name over here. If you're coming from a Windows background, you would be very used to having these folders which look like this. So it would look like CLI files, right? So capitals and spaces and everything is just mixed together. Even the Windows program files looks like program files, right? It looks like that with a space in it. It's a really bad idea to have spaces in your folder names, in your file names. It's one of those things that leads to a lot of problems down the line, and we'll see why this is in one of the future videos. But for now, just take my word for it that you want to make sure that your folders do not have spaces in them. Your folder names should not have spaces in them. It leads to a lot of headaches down the line, and whenever you post a bug somewhere, you ask somebody for help and they see some spaces in your file names, in your folder names, that's the first thing that they're going to tell you to fix, right? So make sure that you get in the habit of replacing all the spaces in your folders with a dash, and it's in general a good idea to have everything in lowercase, right? So as you can see, ls is not a command, right? So it's a command not found. That means the Linux command line does not recognize the capital ls because the command is lowercase ls. So this is case sensitive. So that is a very brief introduction to how you can issue a command and get some feedback from the console about the output of your command. And I shared with you a very important tidbit about how to name your folders. So in the next video, we're going to start doing some more interesting stuff. So see you there. So let's continue with our command line operations. So we're going to change our directory. So currently we are in the home folder /CLI directory. For you, it's going to be probably just the home directory. So what we want to do is we want to change our current working directory to this folder over here that we just extracted. So for that, we just say cd change directory CLI-files-0.0. Right? So we hit that, enter, and now we are over here. We can hit ls again to see what we have in this folder. So these are some folders over here. All these blue ones are folders, and this readme is a file. So we have these files and folders over here, and what we want to do is first take a look at how we can create our own folder. If you are in a GUI, what you would do is you would find the file menu, or you would right click and then you would say new and then a folder. So that takes approximately 5 seconds. In the command line, you're going to say mkdir, and we'll see how we can speed this up, but this is already pretty quick. And you say temp, say hint, enter, and now this temp directory has been created. How do we know? We can say ls, and as you can see, this temp directory has been created. If we want to change to this directory, we can go ahead and say cd temp, enter, and now we are in this temp directory over here. We can hit ls and we see nothing because the temp directory has just been created and it has no files in it. So we want to go back to our parent directory. For that, we hit cd dot dot. So this might be familiar from your Windows background, and as you can see, there is nothing really difficult going on over here. Another way is to go to cd temp, and if you want to go back to whatever directory we were working on prior to coming over here, we can hit cd dash. So this is very useful. It's going to come in handy in a little while. Now what we want to do is first hit clear so that we have a clean slate, and we want to create a directory d3 within a directory d2 within a directory d1, right? So in a GUI, you would create a directory, go in there, create another directory, go in there, and then create another directory, right? So here we can simply say mkdir d1/d2/d3. That means create a directory d1, within that directory create another one d2, and within that create another directory d3. Except when you do this, you're going to get an error. What that means is it's trying to create this d3 when d2 does not exist, right? So for that, what we can do is we can say mkdir-p d1/d2/d3. P essentially means that you create them one by one so that you don't get this error over here, and you hit enter. And now you can see that if we do ls, we have this d1 over here. We can go into d1, cd d1, and say ls. We have d2, we can go into d2, and then we can say ls, and we can go into d3 similarly, and we can say ls, and now this is empty. So if we want to go back to our parent directory, so this is going to be the parent directory of d3, which is d2, and then we are in d1, and then dot dot, and we are in our current working directory. Another way to do this is to go to cd d1/d2/d3. So you are over here, and now you can hit cd dash, and you go immediately to the previous working directory that you were in. So this is quite handy when you're working with this. And this comes in handy when you're trying to create several directories in a hierarchy, and you know where you want things to be, and this becomes really easy, and it's a really great time saver. So as I mentioned earlier, we don't just want to tell you what the commands of Linux are, we want to motivate why you want to use them. And this is the theme that we're going to follow throughout this course. Everything that you can do on the command line, it's going to save you time. It's not just that it's more powerful, it also saves you time. If you have a terminal open and you're trying to do something that is productive, and you're trying to get things done, and you have to fight your GUI, that's going to take a lot of time. In the terminal, once you have an understanding of the commands, they come in naturally to you, and you will be able to type them really quickly. And we're going to take a look at how you can speed the typing up even more. But even if you're typing slowly, it's still going to save you a lot of time. So to recap, we created a directory, and then we created a hierarchy of directories. And now what we want to do is we want to see what kind of directory structure we have in the D1. So we can say ls minus r, and then we can say D1. Now you will notice over here that up until now we have been giving some commands, and then we are passing some arguments to those commands. Now this is a special type of an argument, and this is called a switch. So minus r is a switch which says that I should be showing the D1 directory recursively. So R stands for recursively, and when you hit enter, you will see that it will show you that D1 has the contents D2, D1 slash D2 has the contents of D3, and D1, D2, D3 is an empty directory. Right? So ls minus R, you can use it to view the whole hierarchy within a specific folder over here. So we've done a little bit of stuff with directories. In the next video, we're going to take a look at how to manipulate files and what kind of things we can do with files, and we'll get to some really interesting stuff.